Be careful what you put in your body. In 2014, a couple returned to their home to find it trashed in baffling ways. There was lotion all over the door handles, all of their shoes had had their soles ripped off of them, and someone had dumped an entire can of paint all over the toilet. Despite the obvious break-in, the police come and can't find any evidence of theft, so they leave thinking the couple's not in danger anymore. That night, the couple hears scratching underneath their bed and what sounds like a crying animal. Not wanting to find out what it was, they leave and call the cops, who come right back and start investigating the house, and they make a startling discovery in their bedroom. Wedged underneath the couple's bed was this 90-pound tiny little woman carrying a huge butcher's knife and a hypodermic needle. As they're taking this crazy lady away in handcuffs, one of the officers comes over to the couple and is like, so she was high on meth, and for at least 2 hours, she had been burrowing a hole in the underside of your mattress with that knife to get to you.
Story time, how I found out my substitute teacher was actually my biological father. So of course I went to school for our usual class and our teacher wasn't there. So we had a substitute that day and I could have sworn that I recognized him, but I couldn't tell from where. There would be times during the lecture where I would look up and he would just be looking at me. I felt like there was a weird connection between the two of us, but I didn't exactly know where to place it. Since it was the last hour of the day, he asked me to stay after class. I immediately got the creeps and said no, I had to catch my bus. And I hadn't seen him for weeks after that. Some days later, I noticed a for sale sign on my neighbor's yard. So during their open house, I decided to peek out my window and see who was visiting. And there he was, my substitute teacher. I got the creeps and I just ran upstairs to focus on something else. Once the house sold and the move-in trucks came in, I saw that it was my substitute teacher that actually bought it. I was terrified but still felt this weird connection. That's when my mom offered for us to bring cookies over to his house. She said it was the neighborly thing to do, so that's what we did. So we went to go knock on his door. Stay tuned for part 2 and add me on Instagram.
So one day, this random guy added me on Snapchat. I added him just because you really never know. It could be my soulmate or something. Like, you know, we're gonna call him motherfucking Larry. So right when I added Larry, he sent me a snap. Oh, this is the best part. Just wait, sweetie. So it was a photo of a wall with pictures of me, baby pictures of me, even a picture of my cat, with like tiny post-its all around it. And in the caption, he was like, I manifested you, you cannot leave anymore. I was kind of scared, so I blocked him. And I remember I left to my grandma's house because I was just really scared to even be in my own house. And so the next morning of me staying at my grandma's house, we got mailed this like big box with like confetti in it. And there was this envelope, and I remember the envelope was like, hey, it's Larry. I told you cannot leave. And my family's number was there, our address was there, and a bottle of pepper spray.
This is why you should never leave the table when you're on a blind date. One of my best friends and I worked at the same restaurant. When I came in later that day for my shift, she told me a crazy story. She said that her first table were this guy and this girl, and she could tell they were on a first date. The girl was nervous, so she ordered a glass of wine. As far as she knew, the date seemed to be going well, and the girl got up to go to the bathroom. Right when my friend was about to come over and bring the silverware, she saw him put something in her wine. My friend, obviously terrified and freaking out, let our manager know, who then let the police know, and ran into the bathroom to tell her what was going on. The girl ended up staying in the bathroom until the police came, arrested him, and escorted him out of the building. It was noon on a Tuesday. You don't think you're going to be drugged at noon on a Tuesday.
Story time of how I found out that my boyfriend was sleeping with his stepsister. As crazy as it sounds, I literally just found the whole situation funny. So I was dating this kid, let's just name him Mark, for about 1.5 years. He had a bunch of step-siblings, and they were all younger except one girl that was 16. She was very protective over my boyfriend, but I honestly kind of thought that was just normal, you know? She would always make up some strange excuse why she had to hang out with me and my boyfriend, so we honestly never could hang out alone. They were siblings, so I would never think anything of it. I honestly thought they were just really close. Then one day she said something really weird, and it made me start to think. I seen him slap her butt a couple of times. I kept my opinions to myself at first because, you know, he's my boyfriend and I didn't want to start an argument, but then I said something. His reply was, stop overthinking, she's just my sister. Okay, well, if she's just your sister, why are you smacking her butt? Anyways, one night he wasn't replying to me for like 3 hours and I thought he was asleep. So I log into his Snap to spam cute pictures of me and his memories. And I found videos. Disturbing videos. I'm running out of time, like for part 2.
This is what they meant when they said, don't talk to strangers. In the early 1900s, a 10-year-old boy was playing in the woods when a tall man appeared and asked if he wanted to come back to his cabin for dinner. Totally caught off guard, the boy reluctantly agrees and begins walking. When they get to the cabin, the boy is relieved when he sees Paul, a family friend, sitting on the porch, so the boy happily goes inside. After they eat, the boy says thank you to the strange tall man, says bye to Paul, and then he leaves. He had only walked a few steps when he sees his family, along with Paul, running up the path towards him, frantically asking if he was okay. Confused, the boy says, I'm just fine, and he looks at Paul and he's like, why didn't you tell them I was with you at the cabin? And he points over his shoulder. Paul glances over the boy's shoulder and then narrows his eyes and says, you were kidnapped by a cult 3 days ago. No one's seen you. Terrified, the boy turns around to look at the cabin he just came from, and it's gone. All he sees is a dark forest that stretches for miles.
So it's Friday night, it's Roxy's birthday weekend, and we're all going to her house for the first time ever for our group sleepover. So we get there, and honestly, everything seemed really normal at first. Roxy's house was really nice, and honestly, I was confused why she never wanted us there before. So then we start making banana bread, and all of a sudden, Laura jumps and screams and runs to the other side of the kitchen. She's like, did you guys feel that? And we're all like, what are you talking about, Laura? She's like, I swear something just touched my lower back. And Laura's face turned really pale, like she was genuinely scared, and we spend the next hour convincing her that no one was there, no one touched her back. So then we start watching a movie, Disturbia. Shout out to Shia LaBeouf. And Nina goes to the bathroom, and when she comes back, she's like, Roxy, it looks like something upstairs is maybe leaking because there's this massive wet stain on your bathroom wall. And Roxy's like, oh, don't worry, that stain's always there. She's like, we actually can't figure out where it's coming from. We've had plumbers come and they can't figure it out either. There's no drain or pipe or anything that could be causing a leak at that part of the house anyway. And then Roxy says, but that's why we think our house is haunted. We all look at her kind of shocked, and she's like, yeah, that's why I never invited you guys to sleep over, because it can get kind of creepy. But honestly, at that point, I wasn't that creeped out until we went to bed, because that's when stuff started getting weird.
This is why parents should believe their kids. In 2010, a 15-year-old boy started to notice that the door to his attic, which was in his bedroom, was always open. One day, when his mom's giving him a hard time about being lazy, he's like, well, you're one to talk. You always leave my attic door open. She's like, I haven't touched your attic door in months, and nobody else has either. Not easily frightened, the boy decides to leave the attic door open. And so he's laying in bed, and he kind of looks over at the door, and standing in the door frame is a figure staring right at him. He bolts, tells his parents, they don't believe him, and then 6 months later they move anyway. A few years later, the boy discovers his favorite teacher actually moved into his old house. And so he jokingly asks her, you ever see any ghosts walking around your attic? Her face got completely serious, and she's like, as soon as we moved in, the door to the attic kept opening. So we investigated, and we found a trap door that led onto the roof. Someone had been crawling in through that entrance and living in the attic for years.
This is why you should never go on a subway again. So what happened is that one night, a teenage girl was taking the subway home from work back to her house in New York. Scary part is when she went on board, she sat directly across from two men with a woman sitting in the middle. The creepy part is that the woman kept staring at her and wouldn't even blink, while the two men never once looked at her. Well, at the next stop, a man with a trench coat walked in, but the girl didn't pay much attention to him. The girl kept trying to look away so that one lady wouldn't stare at her, but she just kept looking, wouldn't even blink. Well, at the next stop, that random man with the trench coat pulled out the teenage girl and dragged her out of the subway. She was screaming, asking for help because she had no idea why this guy just pulled her out. But the guy told her to calm down and said he actually saved her life because the woman that was staring at her was actually dead, and the two men next to her were holding her up to make her look alive. The random guy with the trench coat said if he didn't pull her out, she was going to be their next victim.
One day my mom grounded me, which means I didn't have my phone, so I didn't have an alarm clock, so I overslept for school the next day. My brother drives me to school, and since I didn't have a phone, I didn't know that there was no school because of a snowstorm. Me and my brothers, both being dumbasses, don't see that there's no cars in the parking lot, so my brother drops me off and speeds away. I'm knocking on the door for like 20 minutes waiting for them to let me in. Nobody opens the door, bro. I'm like, is there no school today? Boom, it starts to snow, and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm wearing ripped jeans with no jacket. I'm like, oh shit, what do we do now? I live like 15 minutes driving from the school. So I'm walking around looking if I can use somebody's phone. I knock on this lady's door. She opens up and I'm like, ma'am, can I please use your phone? I think she had dementia because she started screaming at me. And she's like, no, slams the door in my face. I finally find an angel like 2 streets down. And she's like, oh, of course, princess, come inside. And in my mind, I'm like, I've seen the horror movies. Thank you, ma'am, but I'm just going to stay outside. I call my mom to pick me up. And she's like, pick you up from where? I'm like, I don't know. I've been walking for 2 hours, bro.